More on that plane crash coming up here in just a few minutes on the Page Avenue extension. Eastbound is closed completely, so if you're getting up and you're heading over the Page Avenue extension from St. Charles into St. Louis County, avoid it. Take Highway 40 or 70 over the Missouri River because the Page Avenue extension closed now due to a plane crash. Tim Weiland will have more of that coming up here in a minute. Overnights on the Big 550 KTRS, we made a change this week, and we are thrilled. Legendary talkman Jim Bohannon mans the airwaves here on the Big 550 KTRS. He starts at midnight, and he goes through 4 a.m., and he's nice enough to spend a couple minutes with us this morning. Good morning, Jim Bohannon.
Hey, good morning, McGraw. You don't have to say legendary. His Excellency will do fine.
Okay, fair enough. We talked this past weekend at the Talkers Convention, and you have been very nice to me throughout the years, and I've kind of geeked out meeting you throughout the years. But you've been doing this radio thing a long time, and I remember listening to you way back when I was in high school.
Oh, I'm sure you did, as a lot of people did. Actually, my first gig, actually, we had a steam-powered transmitter, so it was a little noisy. But I must tell you, my first gig in radio, McGraw, was in my hometown of Lebanon, Missouri, about 150 miles down I-44.
Right.
Station KLWT. We called it Keep Listening, We're Trying.
And now, did you grow up in Missouri?
I did. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I spent the first 18 years of my life right there in Lebanon. Big fan of the Cardinals. Sure.
Yeah. Now, tell me the story about you taking a bunch of listeners to go see the Beatles.
Oh, yeah, that happened in 1964, and the Beatles, Charlie O. Finley, who owned the Kansas City A's at that time before they moved west, he had talked the Beatles into adding an extra concert on their tour, and I took 3 busloads of kids from my rock and roll gig in Springfield, Missouri at KICK, the Sporty 1340 with the Big Stick Lick, and we went up there and watched the Beatles. We didn't hear them because you couldn't hear a thing, but we could see them off in the distance out at second base of the stadium. And then you go home and you play the record to actually hear the Beatles.
And Jim, you played the trombone, is that correct?
Yeah, actually, I was a member of the American Federation of Musicians. I used to play the trombone fairly well, but I think probably this was a wise career choice to put that aside and just make my lips smack making words.
You really burst on the national scene when you started filling in and doing weekends for Larry King. You told me that story this past weekend, but it's such a great story. Tell that story again.
Absolutely. Well, I owe it all to a mechanic who left a wrench in a rocket at Cape Canaveral. This is true. Larry King had just started his nationwide talk show for Mutual Radio. I was working at what was then the Mutual-owned station in Chicago, WCFL. And Larry came to town, borrowed one of our engineers for his remote from the Hyatt Hotel. I found out during the breaks, the engineer told Larry how wonderful I was. And I thought, well, isn't that nice? And I thanked him. Now, there came a time when Larry had to be off to give a speech. That was November of 1981. And at the time, their backup was a guy named Jim Slade, who later went on to be the space correspondent at ABC TV. He was the space correspondent for Mutual Radio as well. Well, this mechanic left the wrench in the rocket. The launch was delayed. Jim Slade was stuck at Cape Canaveral, and Mutual realized they had no bench strength. And somebody said, what about this guy Bohannon in Chicago? And that is how I got my big break. If I could find that guy, I'd buy him a drink.
I love those kind of stories.
Now, your wife grew up in St. Louis?
No, my wife actually grew up in my same town of Lebanon, Missouri. Her name was Annabelle, a lovely woman. And in fact, actually, she was dating football heroes while I was sort of the white Steve Urkel of Lebanon, Missouri. And how she ever dropped her standards to marry me later, I don't know. But we were apart for over 30 years before we got married.
Yeah, she was your high school sweetheart or your high school?
Well, I sort of worshipped her from a near. She was, like I say, she was dating football captains. So.
And is it true that she babysat Claire McCaskill and her sisters?
Yes, she babysat now Senator Claire McCaskill. And the word from Annabelle on Claire was that you could put her to bed, and then 10 minutes later you had to go in and take the flashlight and the book that she had under the covers, and then she would finally go to sleep.
That is a great story. The next time Claire is on the show, we got to razz her a little bit.
I was hoping we'd get a little bit of that.
Yeah. Jim, your show is a mixture of commentary, guests. But what I love most about your show is that you go and you find the experts and you ask them a question, and this crazy thing you let them do now is you actually let them answer the question.
Yeah, well, it's something new that I came up with. I thought, it might have a place somewhere in broadcasting, so I thought I'd give it a try. Now, mind you, if I'm getting a line of bull, I will pressure them. I will push them. If I'm not getting an answer, I'll repeat the question. But, yes, in general, if they have something to say, I think that we should all hear it.
Yeah, no, I know. It's an odd thing, especially in 2014 when everyone has an opinion. Everyone's quick to jump to an opinion, no matter what the topic, no matter what the side you're on in terms of politics. That's why it's such a joy to listen to you. Something I've learned from you all these years is ask them a question and then shut up and let them answer it. And if you don't like the answer, ask it again or push it, as you say. But let them answer the question.
Yeah, I mean, again, as I say, I know it's an odd idea, but just call me strange. What can I say?
Jim, I know you have an extensive news background. Will you bring a journalistic approach to your show?
Well, I do try to, yeah. Whenever we're dealing with substantive issues of the day, but we also do a lot of fun stuff. We do some sports. We do some entertainment stuff. One night we did an hour on whether the toilet paper should hang over the front or the back of the roll. The answer would seem to be at the front, about 2-1, unless you own a cat. And then it has to be over the back, or it'll all be on the floor.
Good advice, yes.
I want to know who actually cuts the toilet paper just perfectly so it's pulled off, so you can pull it off without
perforations.
Yeah,
right?
the perforation.
That's a great job. But can you imagine that? What do you do, Daddy? Oh, I'm a toilet paper perforator, son. What did you do during the war? Yes.
Oh, boy. Jim Bohannon with us. He is now manning the airwaves here, midnight to 4 a.m. here on the Big 550 KTRS. Jim Bohannon, thank you very much. You've been so kind to me over the years. I'm sure we'll talk down the road. And welcome to the family here at the Big 550 KTRS.
Thank you very much, McGraw. And anytime you want me on, just give me a call. We'll do it.
You got it. Thank you, Jim.
You bet.
Okay. Jim Bohannon here on the Big 550 KTRS. I did tell him that story this past weekend about the girl wanting to make out and me spurning her advances so I could listen to his guest.
More interested in his show.
Yeah. He was like, hey, that's a great story.
And that relationship did not end well. Is that what you're saying?
No. They never do, really, when you get right down. 628 here, Big 550